So today I'm talking about something that I can relate with personally. I can't remember the first time I ever encountered that word or became aware of the personality type of wanting to be a perfectionist. But I know that as soon as I heard it, I quickly understood it because it applied to me. Why am I talking to you about this today? Because I realized that for someone like me, that I'm constantly always trying to figure out how to become more productive and maximize my potential. I've realized that this desire to be perfect in everything many times backfires. So the interesting thing about this thing called perfectionism or being a perfectionist is that on one hand you would think that it's a good thing, right? Because it's an attempt to want to be excellent, right? It shows that you have an appreciation for excellence and high standards and you want things to be the way they should be, but on the other hand, it really can backfire and lead to a loss of productivity. This is what we're going to talk about in this video. There are several reasons why I would agree that perfectionist tendency is really a hindrance sometimes to being your best self. And it sounds ironic, like it's contradicting each other. Like trying to be a perfectionist can sometimes hinder you from being your best self. And here are some ways in which perfectionism, that attitude of wanting to be perfect always, can actually backfire and affect your productivity. So number one is procrastination. The perfectionist always tries to wait for the perfect time to get things done. Sometimes you feel like maybe you want to start a business, you feel like that you can't start this business or you can't pursue this idea until you have the funds, until you have the money, until you've made the connections. And sometimes you feel like you can't start that business or start offering that skill because you are not yet perfect in it. And it will surprise you to know that some people, I had this conversation with somebody earlier today. Some people are cashing out on that same skill that you are trying to be perfect in, and they are nowhere even near your own level of expertise, right? I know people who are selling painting, selling artwork, selling their skills as PowerPoint designers, graphic designers, and they're not even half as talented as other people that I know. But because some people sit down and wait until they feel that they have everything nailed down to perfection in terms of their ability to use the software, manipulate the software, use the equipment, they feel like they want everything to be perfect before they start. I use myself as an example. I'm happy that I never allowed that perfectionist spirit to affect me when I started my photography business, because I know normally the normal kind of person I am, I'd have waited until everything was perfect. But I remember that my first wedding, I didn't even know anything about the exposure triangle, which is like the foundation of understanding how to shoot in manual, the aperture, shutter speed, all those things. I didn't even understand all those things. If you had asked me, then I couldn't even explain it to you. But I was shooting my first wedding, and I have no regrets, because that pushed me, kind of compelled me and forced me to actually know how to not just become a good photographer, but actually run a photography business. So you see, sometimes trying to be a perfectionist, you tend to begin to procrastinate because you want everything to be all right. Another problem with being a perfectionist is that perfectionists tend to overemphasize or spend too much time on details. So when planning for an event or planning for something, yes, on one hand, it's good that the more granular you are in your plan, the more detailed you are in your plan, the better the outcomes. But sometimes when you spend too much time on the little minute details and wanting everything to fall in place perfectly, you lose time. And time is of value. Time is also one of the critical parts of being productive, and if you're losing time or spending too much time on one part of the puzzle, you're leaving other parts unattended. That is one of the problems. Now, this is one thing that, I can identify with easily. Another factor why perfectionism sometimes hampers your creativity is the fear of failure. A lot of times, perfectionists are afraid of failure. They just are scared to ever be in that position where they would feel like embarrassed because they failed, and so they spend so much time trying to make everything perfect. Fear of failure, fear of rejection. I remember back in university, there were a couple of ladies that I could have approached to date, but I wanted to make sure that my approach was perfect. I wanted to make sure that my opening line, my conversation, everything, my appearance, I wanted to make sure everything was perfect before approaching or asking for a date. And trust me, of course, I never got to have those experiences. I never got to have those dates. And so many other things really in life. Starting a new contract, starting a new job in particular. One of the things that has helped me back many times from getting to a new job is the fear of failing at that job because I want to be perfect, right? And I think it's so evident and so clear, at least to me, from my own life, that fear of failure is one thing that will keep you from being productive. And many times when you're trying to be perfect in all things, trying to get everything perfectly done because you're afraid of failing, you end up just being paralyzed. You end up not moving. Now, another big thing about perfectionists is the lack of delegation, the fear of delegating tasks. this is something that I can really identify with. I've always been the kind of person that wants to do things myself because I'm just afraid of not getting it right? So I had to learn the hard way, so when I was running my studio, there's a certain way I just like my pictures to turn out. There's a certain vision I have in my mind about the kind of photography I want to do. And so I found myself always trying to do everything. I was still doing a 9 to 5 then, and then I would have my clients, and then I'll go and shoot a wedding or something, and then I would sit down and try to edit everything myself, and I would spend time editing. Like, this is another area where my perfectionist tendencies really show out. I could spend hours and hours and hours editing a particular picture because I wanted it to come out in a certain way. And that's valuable time I could have easily delegated to someone else. Take time out to train the person, to get the person to see photography the way I see it, and just try to get some of these tasks off my shoulder, right? But hey, I would spend time doing it, and I found it very hard to delegate things. In fact, I was anxious about it many times before even actually starting out my studio. And right now, I'm a whole different person. I've learned how to control all those tendencies. But definitely, yes, I know there was a significant chunk of time that I could have given it out to someone else to do some of the tasks I've done. And even now, when I think about the things I still have to do, like I shoot a lot of documentaries now, I run a company and so many things, I have to learn how to delegate and accept people in my team, accept them at whatever level of expertise or skill they are, especially if I believe in them, because the work must go on, right? So that's another reason why we cannot continue to be perfectionists. I'm not saying we should totally allow everything that comes our way to be the way it is. No, we should always try to improve, of course, but the thing is about achieving that balance of learning when to let go and let things be and let things move forward. So one other reason why perfectionism is counterproductive is the fact that many times perfectionists are afraid of experimenting, afraid of innovating and trying new things, because they just have this idea of how things should be, and they have this concept of a perfect system or a perfect product or a perfect result, and they don't want to explore and try different things and see if things can be done differently. Sometimes perfectionists, they're also the kind of people who have this one-track mind. You can't argue with them. You can't bring in new suggestions or new ideas. I've had that kind of boss that tells you that this is how it should be, and even when you try to explain that, you think we should try it this way, they're like, no, it has to be this way because this is what will give us that perfect result, right? So many times companies and people lose out on the ability to innovate and explore and expand their creativity because they are always trying to be perfect in everything they do. So that's another thing that I think is very important. Sometimes perfectionists end up being, spending so much time in time-consuming revisions, revising the work. You write an article. Oh man, this is something that I can identify with. You write an article, you edit a video, you edit a photograph, you do a PowerPoint presentation or animation, and you are just pouring over it over and over, back and forth because you want it to be perfect. It's good. Nobody is saying you shouldn't take time to revise your work, right? In fact, I'm all for it because I hate shoddy work. I hate it when people just do anything and present it to you. That puts me off big time. But generally speaking, at the same time, you have to know when to also let go. So because you cannot continue to spend so much time editing. I mean, sometimes I feel like I'm speaking to myself. You just have to just give yourself a certain time limit to work on something. So if you're working on a video, just tell yourself that between 3 and 5:30, I'm going to do all the revisions I need to do. Once it's 5:30, I'm done. Because you have to put a limit to it. You have to know when to let go. Taking a break and coming back to it gives you a fresh eye. Delegating or asking someone to jump in on the revision also gives you a fresh eye. So sometimes you invite other people to be part of your process just so that they can bring in their own perspective. You can directly ask someone, say, what do you think about this? Is it okay? Once you get the feedback you want from somebody that you respect, somebody who pays attention to detail, let it go. So please, I'm not saying that you should use this as an excuse to give your boss shoddy work, below average work, but at the same time, let's try to avoid spending so much time revising and trying to be perfectionists. How do we overcome perfectionism? How do we limit that tendency in such a way as to make sure that it doesn't hamper our productivity? Well, number one is, we need to emphasize progress over perfectionism. Progress over perfection. And making progress is more important than getting it perfect, to be honest. There are times when just seeing yourself advance, hitting those milestones is more important than getting it right all the time. Setting realistic goals, very important. Look at your goals, make sure they're realistic. Embrace imperfections as learning opportunities. Making mistakes is okay. Making mistakes is allowed. Making mistakes is part of the education. Making mistakes is part of success. Being open and willing to make mistakes also can help you overcome perfectionism. Learning how to prioritize your time and energy, giving yourself time limits and saying that when it gets to a certain time, I'm going to let go and let it be, so that you make progress. It's good to try to be perfect. It's good to try to be the best you can be, but don't do it at the expense of being productive. Don't do it at the expense of making progress and moving forward your life. Don't do it at the expense of missing deadlines and missing targets and missing your goals. Just keep moving. Just keep doing it. As you keep moving, as you keep making your mistakes and making progress, you gradually get perfect. All those sports celebrities, guys like Messi, Ronaldo, and other people who are excellent, they kept on moving forward. Imagine Ronaldo saying that he's not going to play until he gets it right all the time on the field. No. So during practice sessions, they train, make mistakes. They've missed penalties before. Messi has missed penalties before, but they keep on coming out every day to the pitch to work. So yeah, that's the idea. Hope this video inspired you somehow. If it did, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so that you don't miss any other videos. I'm going to keep it coming. Till the next video, see you.